In a faraway kingdom of the Tridenti Kingdom, there was a village called Chon, located in Shaanxi Province. In the Song family house, a bunch of servants suddenly showed up to serve the head. The Song family is the head of a noble sect that has been living in a small village in Shaanxi Province for over 100 years. They were known for their white jade sword and were considered the pride of the village. The Song sect was known as the Noble Sword Sect, but the head had one concern. The head of the Song family was a noble sword named Song Bujang. He trained the second son of the Song family, named Sung Baek. But suddenly Zhang got angry at his son for not doing his errands properly. Baek immediately turned into a cute little cat and turned to his father. Baek said he was wrong again. Zhang got really angry and asked if that was something the son of the Sung family should say. The guys on the sidelines said that again, and they basically blamed the other team for starting it. Is he really being that tough on a 7-year-old? But there was nothing they could do about it anyway. But at that moment, the eldest son of the Song family, Song Yun, was too focused on training to pay attention to anything else. He quickly put his abilities to use and showed off some impressive skills with the blade. The guys watched all of this and said that the older young master seemed like he could take on anything. For someone so young, he'd already mastered the Song family's 4-trait technique. On top of that, he's already read the Troechni and books on war tactics. Since the young master is still learning from the elder, Head Chan is keeping a close eye on him. Then he remembered and said they should stop the head. The other guy was on board with the plan because she might get involved. Zhang let the boy know that he was executing the technique incorrectly. Baek was really scared of his dad and asked if he was doing it right as he repeated the movements. Chan became even more upset and started reprimanding his son. But then a young girl came up and asked them to stop. Zhang relaxed right away when he heard his wife's voice. Baek rushed over to his mother and gave her a hug. Chan tells his wife that he thinks she's being too lenient with him because he keeps getting away with things. But the girl didn't respond. With one glance, she showed him that he was mistaken. And Chan was quick to fall silent. The girl said he was only 7 years old. What could he possibly expect from a child so young? He let out a moan that sounded like a dog on the hottest day. Chan replied that the guy was born into a warrior family. You just have to be a little stricter with him. The girl asked him right away, so what? Does he want Baek to be like Yoon? A kid who, at 13, doesn't smile, doesn't pay attention to his mother, and spends his days practicing with a sword. Yoon was such a sweet kid, and Chan really made him into a son who has no interest in anything. But then, Yoon decided to take a break and saw his parents arguing. He thought it was pretty strange. The girl told her husband that he'd sold out the older child. But there's no way she's going to let him raise her like that, and smiled and said, let's do this again. This is what happiness is all about. At that moment, he looked up at the blue sky and let his imagination run free. As the afternoon wore on, the sky grew increasingly ominous, and then, bam, thunder rumbled and a storm broke out. Chan looked up at the sky and wondered why it was raining. It doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. I think we'll have to take a break from practicing tomorrow. If they're going to be practicing with a sword in the rain, he immediately thought of his wife's words. She told him the kids might catch cold. He knew she'd make a fuss again. Chan looked at the trophy blade and said, don't just scold Baek. He's also been neglecting his duties at the manor. Chan decided to practice a bit, and taking his magic blade, he began to demonstrate something magnificent. But in a surprising turn of events, Yen was taking a stroll around the grounds when he saw his father practicing. Roots that go deep into the ground aren't afraid of frost, but you can keep plants green all year by getting rid of hurricane winds and winter cold. His father had mastered the 8 traits of the family technique Dream, and his tree is evergreen. Chan finished his training and asked his son why he'd come by so late. Yen said the general was looking for him, so he'd come to let him know. Chan asked, General? Yen said that was right. Some old lady had asked to come in and wait out the rain. Chan asked, what other old woman would be here at a time like this? Yen said he knew outsiders weren't supposed to be here, but she seemed like she needed help, so he decided to let her in and asked Chan for permission. Should he turn her away? Chan said he'd go and take a look. But then he stopped suddenly and asked his son what his father's usual approach was. But Yen was taken aback and a little perplexed at this juncture. Chan thought to himself, is he being too greedy? No matter how talented Yen was, asking him about the 8 traits was too much. Yen replied that his father's path was green. like the roots of a tree, firmly embedded in the ground to resist the winds. That's why the tree itself stays green all year round. Chan immediately laughed and said that he knew Yen was capable, but this was too much. At that age, they're already talking to him about family techniques. Yen asked his father to clarify what he meant. Chan quickly handed him the sword and told him to take it. Yen took hold of the blade, not expecting what was to come. Chan told him to start practicing the way of white jade from tomorrow. He was already set. Yen replied that white jade can only be used by the head of the family. The head replied that it was just a good sword. Ideally, a sharp sword should be in the hands of someone who knows how to use it properly. Chan was delighted and said his spirits were so lifted that he was almost ready to give the old woman his bedroom. Chan went to the gate and asked the old woman, "Is this Wat Chan temple?" The grandmother said she wanted to make an offering to the Buddha. After all, her son was taken to war and didn't come back. She wants to pray for the mother who didn't take proper care of her son so that she can be forgiven and meet him in heaven. The head thought for a moment and said she could come in. She'd be taken to her room, and in the morning, someone from the temple would show her the way. The grandmother was taken aback by such words and replied that the nasty old woman did not deserve such treatment. Given all these great qualities, it's no surprise that he became well known throughout Shaanxi province. She had faith in his reputation. Given his temper, it wouldn't take much for him to show the poor old lady the door. And without a moment's hesitation, she fired a bullet from the gun directly at his head. The head fell to the ground right away and asked the old woman what she was doing. The old woman said she'd made the necessary preparations. They're known as a village sect, but they're actually among the top 3 in Shaanxi province. If he exceeded her expectations, that would be problematic. Chan quickly grabbed his blade and said with a gesture that it was too soon for him to die. And then he chopped off her head. Chan then fell to his knees and started spitting blood, saying she was a hypocrite. Then, all of a sudden, the old woman was still alive and told him not to overdo it. He was poisoned by the sand 7 paces from his goal, and the more he moved, the more painful it became. It seems the grandmother's body was just a skeleton. Out of nowhere, a kid came out of it. Chan asked him who he was. The boy asked, "Does it really matter? The Song family would be destroyed today anyway." Chan got pretty upset and started yelling at him to stop. But the boy told him to take his time. The guy decided to show his strength and suddenly released long claws from his hands, which he used to block the head's attack. Chan wasn't ready to give up and was launching his strongest attacks, but suddenly he saw this guy's claws enter his blade. The head moved away immediately and saw that it was corroded. But there's no way steel can corrode metal. "I think this technician is definitely Blood Demon Sure told Master Song that he was really impressed. He keeps moving even though he's poisoned." Chan asked what brought a henchman of a demonic cult leader here. Sure replied that possessing something he couldn't control was a reason to get angry. The head didn't understand and asked him, "What do you mean?" Sure replied, "White jade sword." A white jade sword that had claimed many lives during the war. The old man was impressed by its power and wanted to get his hands on it. This meant that the jade sword would be the first trophy of the Central Plains. The first offering from the True Demons Society will be presented by the Blood Demons. Chang thought and realized that the demonic cult was back in action. Maybe it's an advance party. They'll be attacking soon. And in that case, as he said, it looks like the extermination of the Song family is inevitable. It's good that Un has a jade sword on hand, and now they need to get out of there before the reinforcements show up. Sure asked him what had happened. For some reason, he has a strange posture. Is he really ready to start his final battle? Chan immediately told the Song family's children that they needed to do whatever it took to survive. After all, their roots were in the Song family. And was startled greatly seeing his father heading to attack to protect them. But mother grabbed his hand and told him he couldn't go there. Yen asked his mother to let him go. He would go to his father. The girl immediately answered him that it was the order of the head of the family. Does he dare to disobey him yet? Yen couldn't accept it, and seeing his father fighting alone, he hoped he would stay alive. Beck asked his mother why he should dress up. His mother told him that he and his brother were going on a trip. Beck was surprised and asked why his brother had turned away. Un at this moment was thinking, was it right to run away leaving his father here? It would be better to send his brother along with his mother. Mother turned to Yen and told him to take this sign. This is the mark of the Sung family of rising dragons. It is proof that they belong to the Sun family. Yen was surprised and immediately realized that her mother was also going to stay here. The mother immediately hugged her eldest son goodbye. His mother used to tell Jen that he was already so mature. She doesn't understand how she didn't notice it before. Yen couldn't hold back and cried too. His mother told Beck to come over to them. She ordered the younger one to obey his brother. From now on, the two of them are one, so they should never be separated. Peck was surprised and asked, "Ho?" Mother replied that brothers are heaven-sent friends. Therefore, their friendship is not a duty, but a privilege, and Beck should follow his brother like a father. And Un should guide his brother to the true path. The mother asked them if they understood her. They immediately went down the secret exit, and Beck asked his mother if she would go with them. The mother replied that they would go ahead and she and her father would follow them. Beck was surprised and asked if it was like a game of hide and seek. The mother replied that it was right as hide and seek. It was a very long game of hide and seek. Without the knowledge of martial arts, it would only be a burden to them. It's the best way to date them. They must survive by all means. And may they be happy. And then the elder saw that strangers had entered the territory and asked who they were. But he was immediately stabbed in the chest. At this time, Chan kept fighting, but he already had little strength. Sure gave out and said that Master Song was holding up well, and this is the first time he fights someone who has lasted so long in a battle with a member of the Blood Demon Sure tribe. But he was already getting bored. Let him give them the white jade immediately. Then, he would kill him painlessly. Chan wondered if his children were able to leave safely. He told Demon that fortunately, it seemed that today, the heavens did not seem to wish for the fall of the 7 songs. Chan immediately looked at him angrily, and told him to finish already. The demon laughed, and replied that no matter what, everyone should think that it was set up by other sects. Even if he is poisoned 7 steps in pursuit of the soul and poison of Shure's blood demons. Immediately, Chan decided to show him who was in charge. The demon hadn't expected this, and didn't even have time to dodge before Chan cut him into small pieces. The demon asked one last time, how did he do it? And in the same second he said goodbye with his life. Chan thought and rejoiced, for the 2 poisons don't mix well. The poisons are rare, and because of that they were able to be stabilized. But his time was coming to an end. But suddenly, someone behind his back said that the Song family's technique did not get its fame for nothing. Turning back, he saw the demons who had come to his clan. The demon said that Song had dealt with the blood demon. But what if the 12 swords of the true demon society were against him? What will he do then? After their defeat in the war, their demon cult was in a humiliating position for 40 whole years. The true demon society had always been at the forefront of martial arts advancement. The demon had told his men to bring the white jade sword of the Song family as his first trophy. The destruction of the Song family would mark the end of an era and humiliation. He immediately ordered his men to destroy everyone and everything in the village. Chan at this time realized that there were still these demons left that he must destroy. And he needed to hold out a little longer. Chan asked them what the demon cult dogs were doing here. Just then a guy came out and replied that they needed to deal with everything before the head came. Immediately giving orders to his subordinates, they all pounced on the head of the Song family together. At this time, Yen and his brother fled underground, hoping to escape from danger. But Yen was punished for leaving his father alone to fight. Beck turned to his brother and asked him if they could move slower. Un told him to bear with him, but suddenly Beck was left without strength and fell to the ground. Yen stopped abruptly and asked him what he was doing. Beck replied that he wouldn't go. Yen asked him to get up, since they don't have time for this kind of thing. The boy said he was having a hard time, and he couldn't take it anymore. So he decided he would wait here for his mom. Yen got really angry and grabbed his brother's hand and told him to go faster. But Beck resisted and said he didn't want to. Suddenly at this time, the ground shook violently. Ying stopped and thought, what's going on there? Beck turned to his brother and pointing his finger told him to look over here. At this time, Chan fought alone against several demons, and even managed to finish off a few of them. Then a bulky man jumped on him and shouted at Chan to die. The head saw this and immediately prepared to defend himself. Chan, with a single movement of his hand, turned the strongest energy on his enemy, and shattered his weapon into pieces. His strongest attack continued, and behind the weapon it went to the enemy himself, and chopped his arm. By this time the girl came running and asked him what he was doing there. He was almost dead. She used all her strength to get close to him, and said, "Uncooperative man." But in the same second, she stopped abruptly in surprise, for Head Chan had revealed his most powerful magic. The girl thought at that moment, "What is this? He's about to die, isn't he?" And where did this overwhelming sense of fear come from? But suddenly, the demon head himself came in, and called his subordinates idiots, saying that he had told them that Song Chan was a difficult opponent. The girl turned around abruptly and looked up at the roof of the house to see that it was the head who had arrived. The head looked at the situation and ordered his true demon warriors to proceed with the order. Chan was not afraid of anything, and seeing all of them said because of anger that this place will become their grave. Chan turned into a monster because he realized his family was in danger, and cutting each of them open said that he would leave no one alive. The girls saw all of this, and couldn't believe such a thing. Is Song Chan's martial art really that strong? She knows about the rumors, but she didn't think he was that good. Just then the head came up to her, and said that he was just playing with them. The girl was surprised and asked what? She immediately asked the head to give them a little more time. The head replied that he would now see how much he would play out his old friend. The girl heard all this and wondered what he was talking about. Chan was fighting the demons at this time, and even handled it easily. He realized that he still had a little more to go. And then the demon head said that, as expected, he had finished at the 8th line. Chan immediately recognized that familiar voice, and turned around to see that he was being attacked by the demon head himself. He immediately repelled the attack with ease. The head told Chan that it had been a long time since they had seen each other. Chan was greatly surprised and asked why him? The head replied that he would only say that it was not a matter of personal animosity, and he sees that he has not yet lost his power. The girl watched the strongest duel and said that she couldn't believe her eyes. Why are they using the same martial art? The demon head said that his Song family's techniques were still great. Chan replied to him not to embarrass himself. How dare a fugitive mention the Song family's techniques? The demon head replied that just as Chan said, he was a fugitive. But even a healthy pine tree can be ruined. But suddenly, Chan saw his sword break apart, and the jerk struck at the corroded spot. The demon head said that Chan knows that without the jade sword, Song techniques only have half the strength, right? But suddenly at this moment, from underneath the ground, Beck screamed in pain. The demon head stopped abruptly, and used his hearing. He immediately took his gaze to the place where the wall had been broken. And with his gaze he saw that there were children sitting under the wall. By this time his subordinates had come and brought the head's wife, who immediately kneeled down. Chan was immediately angry when he saw his wife. He asked her why she was here. What happened to the children? The girl turned to the demon head and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The demon replied that he did not want to meet her in this way. The girl replied to him that he was still just as stupid. It seemed to her that he had realized in the past that he would not get anywhere that way. It would be the same from now on. The demon listened to her, and said what boring last words. Chan saw that things were bad and realized that he didn't want that. The girl turned to her husband and said that she was happy to meet him. The demon head immediately swung his blade and killed her. Chan saw all this and was so angry that he ran towards his wife. He immediately grabbed her head and asked her why. Chan asked Demon why he had killed his wife, who had nothing to do with them. Demon asked, didn't he say? He has no personal grudge. He's only guilty of possessing something that wasn't right for him, and that he didn't have the strength to protect it. Chan asked him, was it just for that reason? But suddenly the demon saw the guy evolve, and with a motion of his hand, he took his blade. As he picked up his mighty blade, his aura began to stand out so strongly that it frightened everyone around him. The demon head immediately realized that this was a great void. This was a perfect dream technique that could only be achieved by reaching 9 traits. Had he surpassed his limit because of his anger? The demon said, except his technique wouldn't reach him. Chan got close to him that second and told him to shut up. After that, there was a large explosion. Chan's blade stood in front of the demon's face, and froze. The demon replied that he had said Chan couldn't, while his subordinates put chains on him and kept him at a distance from the head. Chan said that the day would come when he would be killed by the children of the Song family. The demon immediately raised his blade and replied that he would wait. The demon killed his friend and said he didn't want to pay for his wound like that. But then a subordinate came to him and addressed him. The head asked, "What happened?" The subordinate replied that they had discovered a secret passage. The head asked in surprise, "A secret passage?" And then he recalled the situation earlier and realized that it was Song Buchan's children. But otherwise, it would be completely boring to collect the debt in this way. The head ordered his men that they were coming back. The subordinate was surprised and asked what? The girl also asked him, what did he mean? After all, the white jade sword was definitely carried away by the Song family's children. If the elders found out that they just put them down like this. The head said that she never realized that the Song family technique and the jade sword were just an excuse. He had not originally intended to indulge the old men's desire to collect objects. The girl replied that they wouldn't let it go. The head immediately started laughing and replied, "For the sake of entertainment once every 10 years, it's worth a little patience." The girl was greatly surprised and looking at the head thought, what the hell was he up to? When he got to the house, Beck asked his brother why he was doing this. After all, his father was hurt. Why are they running away? He started waving his hands and asked his brother why. After all, his brother is strong. Why are they doing this? Peck fell to his knees and cried, saying he would not forgive. And it turned out that his brother was a coward. Yen couldn't answer his brother's questions, and as the eldest, he knelt down in front of him and hugged him. Ping immediately felt the love from his brother, but Beck shouted at him to let him go and called him a coward. But Un didn't let him go and pulled him even tighter against him. Yen replied to his brother that he promises that he will definitely take revenge on them. And no one will leave it at that. Beck told his brother that there was no point in revenge. They would be better off if they just went to Mom and Dad. The next morning the boys reached Beijing, and using cloaks they tried to hide their identities. But suddenly, unexpectedly, Peck saw a girl nearby buying food, and he sighed sharply from exhaustion. Yen asked his brother, "Is he hungry?" Peng was surprised at such a question from his brother, and didn't answer anything, stepping aside. Yen pondered in his head and realized that since that day, Beck hadn't spoken for days. He still hadn't come to his senses. Yen told his brother not to go anywhere then, and to wait for him here. He'll go look for food. Beck was confused at this point, and wanted to stop his brother, but he couldn't say a word. But in his heart, he realized that he didn't want Un to leave him. He might not eat. Let him just stay with him. And then Beck remembered his brother telling him that he would never leave him. And straightway he clenched his fist. Beck humbled himself, and told his brother that he should come back soon. Un asked people for food, but they refused and threw water in his face. The man said a beggar in the morning is bad luck. Let him consider himself lucky. Next time he'll get beaten up. Yen said that he knew the townspeople were heartless, but he didn't think it was that much. But among so many people, there must be someone to help. Walking down the main road hoping to find food. Some people from the alleyway spotted him and chased after him. They slowly moved behind him and tried not to show their faces. But Yen turned around abruptly and asked, "What do they want?" The man laughed and replied that it was nothing like that. They had just seen him chased away a few times before. And it looked like he was hungry, and if he went with them they would give him a treat. How would he like such an offer? Ing immediately realized that these people wanted the white jade from him. Fortunately, not many people here are skilled in martial arts. These look more like local bandits. But there are too many of them. Yen decided he'd better run away and rushed right away. The man told his men they were standing. Have them catch him immediately. He must be caught alive. Yen realized that he had been overconfident. He thought they would be safe if they left Shanxi province. But it's not just people with martial arts skills that are dangerous to them. We have to get back and go to Loyalties. At that time a big wagon was passing through the city. And the girl was looking out of the window with astonishment at everything around her. The old man turned to Surin and said that if she stuck out like that, she might fall. Ren laughed and asked the old man whose student she was. The old man replied that she was overexcited because it was the first time she had been out in the city in a long time. It was one of the 4 heads of Daimo's Murima schools. The old man thought that even in a spacious Murima school a child would sooner or later become bored. Sometimes it's worth taking her out. But suddenly, the old man felt that something was about to happen. Ren had fallen off the wagon at the same time. As she fell, she saw herself hit a sharp rock with her face, and closed her eyes to avoid seeing such a thing. But after a few seconds she opened her eyes and saw that she was standing right in front of a rock. The old man used all his magic to save her, and caught her in midair so she wouldn't get hurt. The old man asked if the man who fell out of the wagon and almost died from hitting a rock was definitely his apprentice. Ren smiled and replied that of course, he was the apprentice of a caring person who wouldn't leave his favorite student to die. The old man looked at her and replied that she was quite eloquent. Ren suddenly asked her teacher if he could wait. The old man immediately turned off his magic and left her to fall. Ren's fall replied that it was too much. She had done wrong, of course, but to leave her like this. Ren thought and wondered why the wagon had stopped. But looking around she saw a guy lying in front of her. Ren immediately ran up to him and asked him to wake up, and opened his eyes and saw the girl. Ren rejoiced, and it was happiness for her that the guy was still breathing. But why is this guy's face so beautiful? And didn't realize what he was saying and called the girl Mom. The teacher walked over to Ren and said that she would have died while she was staring at him so intently. Ren started to deny it and told the teacher that it wasn't like that. The teacher said that since her student had already fallen in love with this guy, he should save him. Ren got really angry and blushed at the teacher's word. The teacher asked her to be quieter. He needs to check his pulse. The teacher realized that fortunately, this guy had just passed out from exhaustion. Considering his physique, he looked like a well-trained child from a warrior family, so what happened to him? But suddenly his gaze darted to this guy's sword. At this time, a man came up to them and said that he had finally been caught hiding like a rat. The man asked the old man to give them the sword. This sword belongs to him. The teacher looked at the sword and asked what they said was theirs. The man replied, "That's right. If he gets in the way, he certainly won't get away in one piece." The teacher took the boy and asked how dare the man appropriate a sword that had cut off the heads of countless followers of a demonic cult. The men felt his strongest energy, and couldn't understand how this old man could be so strong. At this time, Beck stood at the very spot where his older brother had left him. He stepped aside and sat quietly and silently. Beck remembered what his brother had told him earlier in the forest. As he watched him, he wondered what he was doing. It was past his bedtime, but it was too noisy. He ordered him to be quiet because of the pursuers, but he himself makes the most noise. Beck was very angry at his brother, and thought he was a coward, and was never ready to forgive him. But then suddenly something knocked, and Beck looked at the stove and saw that there was a medal next to it. Yen said that this is the sign of the Song family's rising dragon. If they split up, that's all he'll have left. Yen looked up at the sky and told his brother that he wouldn't leave him. But Beck remembered all this and clutched the sign in his hands and cried hard. He realized that his sibling had abandoned him and decided to go his own way. But at that time, the very wagon in front of which Yen had fallen down passed by him. The teacher immediately picked up on this boy and he seemed very unusual. But at this time, Yen was unconscious and Rin was keeping an eye on him. Beck was going his own way and turning things over in his head said that his sibling Yoon had abandoned him. The head of one of the 4 strongest cults. This title refers to the 4 strongest cult masters who participated in the Great War against the demonic cult 40 years ago. And after that Great War, they retired and founded a cult sacred to all cultists, the Mirima School. During the hospitalization of the Mirima School, Yen shouted for them to let him in. After all, his own brother was waiting for him. The teacher replied that he was sorry that he knew his brother had stayed there. He would not have taken him away so thoughtlessly. Let him not worry about it. He sent a man, so just wait. Yen immediately got out of bed and said he had to go, and with tearful eyes replied that his brother would be waiting for him. The teacher tells the guy not to worry, they will definitely find him. He swears on the name of one of the 4 chapters. Ren was also supportive, and told the guy that it was true. Her teacher never lies. But Yen did not agree with them, and at night he immediately decided to run away to find his brother. The guy immediately thought, and realized that the promise of one of the 4 chapters is absolute. But he doesn't have time to wait. How deep is he in the mountain? He's been walking for quite some time now, but the mountain still won't end. Now I see why the whereabouts of the Mirima School are never known. But suddenly and unexpectedly he saw a strange man walking along the path, and immediately examined his belongings and saw that he had 3 swords, 3 pads, and unusual clothing. And he seemed to have heard of him somewhere. Obviously, he is one of the martial arts masters, he will act naturally. There should be no bad people near the Mirim school. But Yen walked beside him and said nothing. But the stranger passed the boy and said that he had a good sword. Yen immediately realized things were bad, and sharply nudged his blade, placing it in front of the man's jaw. The stranger asked him what he was doing. The old man merely praised his way. Yen replied that everyone who said that was out to get him. He told him to stand still and he would have to leave quietly. The guy called Yen a boy and said that he seemed to have misunderstood something. He has a lot of swords without him. Yen told him to be quiet and stand still. The boy told the boy that he was too quick to jump to conclusions. Immediately, with the slightest touch, he pushed the boy aside. Yen managed to land on his feet and realized that he couldn't believe it. Such power from just an ordinary hand touching the sword. The guy started laughing and said he wasn't wrong. He was holding a very expensive white jade, and was surprised greatly, for this stranger recognized the white jade. Is it possible? And then he remembered the conversation with his father. Yen asked his father if it was true that their grandfather was a hero of the Great War. The head replied that it was true. Their grandfather saved Mirim along with the 4th chapter of Mirim school. Ing said that was why he had been given the white jade that had exterminated countless cultivators. The head replied that it was like that. He had gone through a lot being Han Hel's sword. Their grandfather was also strong, but he said that Han Hel's strength was unrivaled among the 4 heads. Beck smiled and said that it turns out Han Hel is the strongest. The head replied that exactly. After the Great War, there was even an expression like that. Peck asked which one? The head replied that it was 3 swords and 3 paths. If he meets Han Hel, let him run. And immediately thought, how could he have forgotten? It's not often that you meet someone who carries 3 swords with him. And then the stranger said that he didn't know what the matter was. And Ing realized that the strongest Han Hel was in front of him. The guy said that only a few people had put a sword to his throat and survived. Yen thought he looked young, but it was definitely one of Han Hel's 4 chapters. Running away from him was pointless, so what should he do? Han saw that the kid must have realized who he was, but there was a fighting spirit blazing in his eyes. For the first time in a long time he was seeing something interesting. Han told the guy that this is what they would do then. If he could get the old man to draw 1 sword in 20 seconds he would let him go, but if he loses, will become his disciple. But Yen was surprised at such an offer and didn't know what to say to him. Han asked Yen that he was so excited to be able to become his disciple. Don't let the little guy worry. This old man will make him the strongest after him. Yen told Han to keep his word. If he made him draw his sword, he would let him go. After 2 years in the village, the buyer came to the seller and said, "Here is the money for the goods." The seller smiled and told the man what kind of person he was. He gives his money away without even checking the goods. The man replied that old man O's goods were always perfect. The seller turned to Sung Beck and told him to bring the goods. Beck brought it and asked the old man where he should put it. When the man saw the boy, he said time flew by so fast. It's been 2 years since he picked him up, right? And then he was worried because the kid was too weak. But he grew up so fast. But then and now, he's still silent. The old man replied to the man that he was right. On the way home, the old man looked at him and saw that he was different from the usual kids. Judging by his physique, he had studied martial arts, but he himself never told his story. The old man asked Peck if he wanted to go home. Beck was surprised at such a question and replied that no. His home is here. But suddenly arriving home, the boy asked that someone had come to see them. The old man immediately saw a familiar face and ran up and asked why he hadn't warned about the visit. And then the warrior opened his Panama and replied to blacksmith that it had been a long time since they had seen each other. It was the general of the East. The old man immediately fell on his knees and replied that he saluted the general. And then the girl came out behind him and said that she was here too. When Beck saw the girl, he was surprised and blushed a lot. The girl asked, "Who is he?" At this time, Peck was sitting under a tree and saw a wagon. He said his family had one too, but all of a sudden someone suddenly asked him what he was doing. When he turned around, he saw that the girl had come. The girl said hello to him and told him her name was Tunbani. But what is this boy's name? Beck was very confused and didn't know what to say to her. But then the guard told him to answer when he was spoken to. Bonnie disobeyed her guard and sat next to him. But the guy was really scared of her and didn't even expect it. Peck asked her what is she doing. Bonnie replied that she introduced herself once again, and she is 9 and he is how old? Beck blushed heavily and saw that she seemed even more beautiful up close. He immediately introduced himself and said he was 11 years old. Bonnie was surprised and said he was like a big brother to him. Beck was surprised and thought, what big brother? Bonnie said that since that was the case, Beck could call her Limey. The boy was surprised and asked, Limey? Bonnie replied, that's right, Limey. The girl told the boy that his face was flushed. Is he sick by any chance? Peck replied that no, he was fine. The guard wondered how dare the little guy talk to her like that. Does he even realize who's laughing and talking to him right now? If he knew who she was, he wouldn't even dare look up. She, the daughter of someone who stands at the very top of an army of millions. Except for His Majesty the Emperor, he has the most power. Precious unmarried daughter, Minister of War and General of the Army. But how dare that country boy? But suddenly Lime started laughing and asked Peck what it was. And she was very curious to get to know him better. The warrior wondered and thought, when was the last time she smiled so genuinely? This was the first time he had seen her smile since the death of the elder mistress. Such a sincere smile. He was actually afraid that this trip would be too difficult for her. But it was still good that she went. In parting, Lime shouted out to Brother Beck, and suggested that they should have better fun next time. The warrior was scared badly when he saw her go out of the window, and told Mistress that it was dangerous. Beck saw them off and realized that this Bonnie girl was a strange girl. But suddenly the old man told the boy that meant he could have such a face. Beck answered him that it wasn't like that. The old man told him that they would meet again in a month, and because of that, they'll be busy from tomorrow. And he suggested that the boy go inside, because it's getting cold. Beck realized he had to be patient for a month. Every day, the old man worked non-stop to make the general's sword, and he worked through sweat. But suddenly Beck came to him, and said that he had brought water. The old man praised him and told him to come over here, for he would show him something. The old man told the boy that from now on he would help him fix the weapons. It's the first time he's seen anything other than farm tools, isn't it? But suddenly Beck saw the sword and immediately realized what kind of sword it was. The old man noticed that he had only looked at tools for the past 2 years, but he recognized the sword at a glance and apparently knew the way. Even if he doesn't talk about the past, this kid is definitely from a warrior family. Beck remembered what he hadn't realized as a child, but now he knew. Why their house had become like this. Because of one piece of metal. It's all because of a damn piece of metal. And then the old man told the boy that it was just a sword. Beck was surprised and asked the old man what he was talking about. The old man replied that he had said that if a bad man uses a weapon, it will bear evil. But in the hands of a knight, it becomes a righteous weapon. The sword in his hands belongs to the one who leads the millions. This sword protects them from the enemies of the north. The old man told Peck that it was impossible to live in hatred. He must live looking forward to the future. Beck saw that his grandfather has been fixing the general's sword for many days now. But he still didn't understand what he meant, living with an eye to the future. What does that mean? But he seems to genuinely care about him. There are very few people left who care about him sincerely. A mother and father who always cared and worried about him. And a strange little girl. And in the hope that they would meet in a few days. And then Peck came to the house and told the old man that he was back. But suddenly he dropped the water and saw Grandpa lying on the floor unconscious. Peck was not confused and called the doctor to examine Grandpa. The doctor told the boy to give it to him twice a day starting today. Peck asked, would it make him better then? And then the doctor answered him that it would reduce his pain. The guy realized at the same moment that it was bad. At parting, the doctor told the lad that the old man was a very good man, and let him bury him in a good place. But suddenly late at night the old man woke up with a cough, and decided to get to his feet. He began to appeal to the heartless heavens that if they would give him some time to finish the sword. He stopped abruptly and thought of son Beck, and he felt sorry for him. But suddenly he heard a knock and asked who was there at this hour. But going outside he was surprised greatly, for the child Beck was trying to craft this sword that the general himself had left behind. Peck took his anger out on the sword. And he realized that once again, he had been abandoned. And it was because of his helplessness, like his mother and father, like his brother, like his grandfather. All of them are leaving because of his helplessness. And he can't let that happen. And then Peck made a huge promise to himself that he wouldn't lose anyone else, no matter what it cost him. The old man looked at him and saw that he was trying hard. But suddenly he remembered the doctor telling him that it would be difficult for him to live another year. Let him better put all his affairs aside and live this time in peace. 1 year later, he said he had no regrets, except that the eyes of the orphan who wandered everywhere were too sad. It was a little whim of a dying old man. That day he asked the boy if he was hungry. The old man actually thought he would leave him after that, but in the end it was he who had to leave. And then the old man told the boy that if he continued, he would only break him. Beck turned around and asked, "Grandfather?" The old man said he yelled so much that he scared him to death. Peck asked him if he was okay. But that's not what the doctor said. The old man replied that this charlatan had predicted his imminent death 2 years ago. So don't let him worry. Beck got excited and asked, "Really?" The old man immediately asked him, how dare he smile when he almost broke such a precious sword. Beck immediately raised his hands and replied that it's not like that. The old man said it was a joke. In fact, the sound of the punch was actually quite good this time, and then Peck rejoiced and considered it happiness. And he saw that Grandpa was feeling much better. The old man told the guy to finish that sword. Beck was surprised and asked him if he was serious. The old man replied that he had had enough of doing empty errands. He was quite capable of doing it now, and then Beck felt his hands shaking. Finally, he was being recognized. The basis of working was steel, temperature, and the subsequent melting. The old man told the guy that forging a sword is a continuous and arduous process. Just like life. Going through hard and tiring times, one day he would definitely do it. But suddenly making the last stroke, Beck was surprised and realized that it was exactly the same sound. The sound of iron sticking to iron. Peck immediately turned around and told his grandfather that he had succeeded. But he saw that Grandpa didn't move or speak. Beck didn't expect such an ending and even dropped that sword on the floor out of fright. He walked over and told Grandpa that he had gotten the sound. Beck asked his grandfather to open his eyes. He was able to forge a sword properly after all. Peck immediately hugged his grandfather and realized it was the end and started screaming hard at the top of his voice. Oh Chongdong's death caused him more than just sadness. Beck cried out because of the realization that everyone who loved him was gone. A few days later, the general would return for his sword. Lime stuck her head out again and asked how much longer they would be gone. The guard told her it was dangerous. The general asked her, does she want to see Brother Song so badly? The general saw that she seemed to really like this guy Peck. Bad boy. And then Lime shouted with joy that they were coming over. Limey immediately entered and shouted to Brother Sung that she was the one who had come. And then she saw Beck lying with his sword and sleeping. Peck told them everything in detail, and even showed them Grandpa O's grave where he had buried him. Lime couldn't contain her emotions, and immediately roared. The guard told him it was cold outside and suggested that he go back to the wagon. Lime refused and said that Brother Song was having a hard time. The general was upset that he was late, and even wanted to pay him back in time. If only he had arrived a little earlier. By the way, that child Sung Beck. He said he finished the sword himself. If he wrote the tombstone by himself, he must be a good writer. The general asked him if he was Sung Beck, right? The guy replied that that was correct. The general told the boy that if he had nowhere else to go, would he like to go with them? Beck was greatly surprised at such a suggestion, and thought that everyone who cared for him was gone. He would be abandoned again. And now he wouldn't let it happen again. Beck thanked him for such an offer and said he would decline. The general realized that he was sorry to lose such a talent. He agreed with him, and told him to take care of himself. But suddenly Lima came running in unexpectedly, and took him by the hand. Limey asked him to go with them. After all, she wishes she could spend more time with him. After saying that, Beck changed his mind and agreed to leave with them. But he thought about it on the way. He thought she offered him because of sympathy. Cheap sympathy from a little girl, but the warmth of her small hands was exactly what he had missed so much. Though he'd gone after them because of Lime's persistence. Suddenly someone from the convoy said they had arrived. The guard told the boy to get off his horse, and then Beck was surprised at what he saw, for this was the house of Tunbani. Suddenly a woman met them and told the gentleman that they had returned. Lima immediately saw her nanny and ran into her arms and hugged her tight and tight. Beck was surprised and saw a huge house in front of him. And he thinks it's even bigger than his. No, they can't even be compared. The woman turned to the master and asked about the child. Limey told her that it was Brother Sung, and then the general said that he had brought him along. Beck was greatly surprised to be introduced like that. The general turned to Mon and said that he would take care of this child from now on. Mo was surprised and asked what? The general was surprised at this answer and asked him if he didn't want to. Mo sighed and told the boy to follow him. He realized he had his own business to take care of, and the kid had come into his head. Beck thought then he didn't understand why people were so surprised. The girls said they had heard it themselves. In the East, to bring a child into a family where there are no men, it means the arrival of an heir. Just then, Mo told the guy that he was late. Beck apologized and replied that he was late because he was accompanying Madam. Beck immediately called him General Mo and right away. Mo was angry after that, because he had told him to call him Senior. Beck apologized and replied that he didn't understand much, so it was hard for him to remember all his words. Mo asked the guy if he had prepared for the exam. Beck replied that he practiced every day as an officer. Mo said that's great. And now then they're going to test how much he's grown. And then he jumped on him. Mo bent even the stick with his strongest attack, and told him to try blocking. Beck wasn't afraid and set his stick up with ease. Mo immediately saw that this kid was really an officer. The basic 4 sides of the world spear technique, he improved it based on training fights. Mo asked him, how much longer would he be just defending himself? And then Beck saw that the teacher had gotten a little hot, so it was time to show what he could do, and now one can easily approach him. Mo got angry and asked the guy why he was laughing? Was he really waiting for this? And now he was much stronger. Mo said there was nothing he could do about it, and changed his grip on the weapon. Beck noticed it right away. Mo started twirling his stick like a helicopter, and attacking told him to try and fend it off. Hitting the strongest attack, the consequences were unbelievable. Mo asked the guy, what was wrong with him? Where had all his confidence gone? Beck asked the older man, what was he talking about? Didn't he use special techniques? Mo asked the guy, what did he think the hares would be against him on the battlefield? Mastering special techniques is just a step on the way to passing the exam, not the kind of enemy who would fight him in a way practiced in training. And the reason for his existence, let him not dare to forget it. Beck took it all in, and felt that these were heavy attacks. At this rate, his weapons wouldn't be able to withstand it. But suddenly, Mo made an attack from a distance that caused Beck's weapon to break. He immediately realized that it was a battle spear. Mo was persistent, and ran to attack, telling Pak that there was more to it. The guy realized he was strong, but martial arts on the battlefield. At this point, Beck decided to act differently, and suddenly lowered one part to the ground. Mo was surprised by this, and said that he would be killed like that. Mo told him to dodge. But Beck used a twist, and easily blocked the attack. Pak had kept his family sign around his neck the whole time, but stepping out to a secluded spot he decided to take it in his hands and stared at it intently. He realized he wanted to go back to those memories. And then Lime came to him, and told him about this pendant. She greeted him, for they had not seen each other for a long time. Beck asked Mistress, is she done yet? Lime suddenly stopped talking and angrily asked, Mistress? And then Lima said that it looked like she had the wrong person. Beck asked her what was wrong. What had he done wrong? Lime turned around and asked him, did he really not understand? Young Master Song? She decided to act openly, and said that it had been a long time since she had gone out for a walk. She decided to act openly, and said that she hadn't been out for a walk in a long time, and then Peck called her Lima. The girl turned around sharply with a smile and asked, what, she didn't hear? Beck told Lima to stop bullying already. Let her be more discreet. She knows the nanny will get mad if he calls her that. Just then, Lime walked over and took his hand. Beck was surprised and asked her what she was even doing. The girl asked, why is that? He used to ride her on his back too. Peck replied that they were kids then. Lime asked him, what about now? Immediately they both blushed as they looked at each other. But in a moment, Beck remembered Nanny telling him not to be mistaken. The others might think he was brought in as an adopted son, but he was no more than a toy to mistress, and the toy must behave accordingly. Did he understand that? Beck clenched his fists, and replied that he remembered. Limey asked Brother Sung, "What about now?" Beck immediately squatted down, and told her to get in. Lime was surprised and asked him what he was doing. Peck asked, "Like what?" He thought that's what she was asking. He thought she was still a child. On second thought, it wouldn't be a big deal if he carried her on his back. Lime got really angry and told him to stop. So she decided that she would go herself. Peck asked her what she was thinking. Should he carry her? Lima told him to get off her back, and not to follow her. Beck apologized to her, and said it was his fault and offered to go together. Lima asked him not to follow her. Nanny was watching them at this time, and saw that Beck was well aware of his situation. Except that the problem is in Mistress's heart. After that, they went for a walk. And when they got to the bridge, Lime told Peck to watch the sunset. Beck saw and realized that she had already calmed down. Judging from the way her mood changes in a second, she really is a child. And then he remembered that Tun Bonnie. And only 2 people were kind to him for nothing. He couldn't protect his grandfather, but he would definitely protect Lime. By all means, but suddenly they weren't the only ones standing on the bridge. Another man with a guard was present. He asked if there was such a girl in the neighborhood. The guards asked the gentleman, "Should I bring her in?" The master said no. Was someone as beautiful as her, a mere entertainment would not be enough for him, and it looks like she's from a noble family. He immediately ordered his men to find out where she lived. At this time, in front of the imperial palace, the general sat on his knees and looked at the sky and said nothing. Mo asked the general, "How long has he been sitting like this? Isn't that enough?" The general replied that he knew that disobeying the emperor's decree was treason, right? And if it's so hard for him to wait, let him go home. And Mo got angry and said that he would go to the palace right now, and the emperor might be at a banquet hosted by Jang Maso right now, and that's why he's not coming out. He's not even sure that the emperor, not Jang Maso, is sitting on the throne right now. The general told him to watch what he says. That Jang is just waiting for an excuse to destroy him. Why can't Mo realize that they use even the smallest reason to take away his power? The emperor is a wise man. No matter how much Chan seduces him with sweet speeches, his eyes will not deceive him. Soon he will understand. Until then, he would wait. Inside, people were telling agency head Chan Maso that the governor-general was still waiting for orders. They have no more excuses to refuse him. Chan replied that he persisted. What an ignorant general. Does he think it's time to stop? Military officials said that they shouldn't provoke the governor-general. If he finds out that the emperor is gravely ill, then his 300,000-man army will march on the imperial palace. Chan told him that he was too worried. Without the Liaodong army, the country would fall into the hands of the barbarians, and the general knows that better than anyone. Does Sa know that the general of the East cares too much about his family, and will trap himself? The next day Lime looked out of the window early in the morning, and was mending her clothes. But suddenly she was surprised and said that it was raining. The stranger was standing in front of the palace at this time and stepped on the mud and said why it started raining at the exact moment he went to get his new bride. The servant asked if I should prepare him new shoes. The boy answered that no. After all, so he would look sincere, it would have a great effect on her. When they arrived at the palace, the guards asked them who they were. You can't just walk in here. But suddenly the boy asked them who got them. He immediately ordered the servant to show their family sign. The boy asked the guard, "Is the son of the Secretary of State a hit for them?" The hunter immediately couldn't say a word as he realized he was a hit. The guy's servant told them to say thank you that the master was in a good mood today. At this time, Beck was training, and he didn't care what the weather was like outside, because he needed to be strong. But all through his training, he pictured Lime's face as she smiled at him and made eye contact. And that made him angriest of all, for he understood her feelings, but Nanny had told him earlier that he was just a toy. At that time, Lime came to him and turned to him in surprise. When Beck saw her, he realized he was in trouble. PJK took a rag and wiped her face, asking why she went to the training ground. If she got sick, Nanny would get mad at him. Lema replied that it was raining so hard. She wanted to bring him an umbrella and he poured it on her. And then Beck remembered his childhood, and seeing him lying on the ground, Lime apologized to him. But he wondered why he suddenly remembered it. He couldn't help himself and started laughing. Lima was surprised at this, and asked him why he was laughing. Peck looked at her and saw that she seemed to have gotten taller, but still a child. He seemed to be the only one who felt strange. Peck suggested to her that they should go, because she might catch a cold. Lima got angry and said it was all because of him, and then a guy came up to them and said that he had finally found it. When they turned around, they saw that a stranger had come to them with his guards. Lima asked him who he was. "This is not a place where an outsider can enter." The boy replied that it was a shame. They would become family. Lime was surprised and asked him what he was talking about. The guy replied that in truth, he had accidentally seen her a few days ago, and she has come to his liking, and he wishes to share these feelings with her. He has come to propose to her because he believes it is the right thing for a noble man to do. No need for a dowry. What about him? His father is Secretary of State Lee Taekon. Immediately, Lima told him to get out of here. The guy didn't understand and asked what? Beck immediately stood in front of them, and said he was told to get lost. The guy said this kid keeps annoying him. Who is he anyway? Peck immediately thought, who was he? And he remembered Nanny telling him not to make a mistake. After all, he was no more than Mistress's toy. Mo also told the guy at practice not to forget the reason why he's here, and then Lime answered for Peck and said that he was her lover. She fell in love with him the first time they met. Beck was surprised and turned to her. Lima answered him not to look at her like that. Beck realized in his head that he had guessed her feelings, but hearing it directly was very awkward. The guy couldn't help himself and started laughing loudly. He asked them if they were mocking him. The guy said it looked like he should give them a lesson in dealing with an upper-class person. The guy's guards immediately headed out to attack them. Beck immediately ordered Lima to go inside. Lima immediately started to fight back, but Beck told her to listen to him and leave. But suddenly, facing this guy's guard, Beck was unable to block the attack, and fell to the ground. Peck told Lima to get out of here. But suddenly the man stepped his nakedness on the guy, and started squeezing. The man told Peck that his techniques, even though he had some success in it, he couldn't pass the exam with those skills, and he's no match for the squad leader. Limey was very scared for him and started shouting to Brother Beck. And then the guy walked up to them and said that's right. It's a view befitting his status. Lime asked them how dare they come and attack people in someone else's house? There's no way she's letting them get away with this. The guy smiled and asked her, would it come down? And what will she do? Does she want to let everyone know that the young mistress is in love with her servant? Lime told him. He was serious. The boy replied that he had planned to take her as his wife, but if she accepted the concubine position, he would forgive her. Lime didn't dare such humiliation in his direction, and after saying that, immediately slapped him. She asked him how dare he, did he even realize where he was? But boy immediately kicked her in the stomach. Lima immediately fell to the ground in pain. Beck was angry, but the warrior held the blade at his throat. The warrior told him to sit still, if he didn't want to lose his head. The guy asked the girl who she dared to hit. Lime replied to him that she would make him pay. The boy immediately couldn't help himself and started laughing again. And he asked his man to give him a sword, and then the warrior turned to the young lord and said that he couldn't, could he? The lad told him to shut up and give him the sword. He won't kill her. The guy tells the girl she's pretty cute, wondering what her face is worth. And now they'll see how she talks when he scratches her face. The warriors saw that his master was going too far. They were ordered to just scare her a little. He has to stop, that crazy guy. The guy told Lima not to move. He might accidentally hurt her. Lime pulled her head to the side and was very scared. The boy laughed, and said that now that face was even pleasant to look at. Let her cry some more to satisfy him. Beck was saying at this time that he promised to protect her. Swore he wouldn't lose her bright smile. And then Beck began to slowly move his head at the sword and brought about blood. The warrior thought at that moment, what was he doing? Even if he's just an ordinary warrior, if they kill a member of the Eastern clan, there's no avoiding problems afterward. Immediately Beck brought everything down to blood and said that he had to protect her. The second warrior realized at this moment that he had to stop all of this right now, before this man injures Tong Bani. But suddenly Beck broke free from the warrior's hands and told them to stop him. Beck immediately with his blade swung at the others. The warrior said he was a fool. took the sword away from the commander. Did he really think it would be over if he got his hands on a sword? It would show him the power of a commander's martial arts. The warrior attacked him back and shouted that holding a sword did not mean knowing how to handle it. And then the warrior saw that he had caught the guy. But suddenly, Beck began to evolve and reveal his essence. The warrior was greatly surprised and didn't realize what kind of tree. But Beck dodged and headed for that guy. But the warrior shouted to the Lord to defend himself. Guy asked his man, what was he carrying? But Beck saw no obstacle in front of him, and cut his head open. Everyone was surprised by this, and the warriors realized that they had lost their young master. Lima was also very frightened and shouted to Brother Sung. Beck didn't expect the day to end this way, and upon seeing that guy's decapitated head he realized he had killed a man. He stood in front of the body like a stump, unable to move. The guards saw him, and could not believe that the young gentleman was dead. The warrior immediately called Peck a bastard and attacked from behind. And with his strongest attack, he wanted to finish the guy off. But suddenly the warrior Mo came and stood up for the boy. The warrior was surprised because he recognized the boy. Mo immediately attacked them and asked how dare the filthy dogs, messing around with an unmarried mistress. The warrior couldn't handle this attack and raised his head asking Mo, why is he here? Mo wasn't done with that, and started giving lessons to Peck. Hitting him asked him if he realized what he had done. Beck didn't know what to say to the older man and only mumbled. But Mo couldn't stand it, and raised his hand at him. But suddenly Lime came running in and stopped his hand saying he had done nothing wrong. Mo begged Madam to let him go. But Lime didn't hold back and immediately cried in front of him. Mo was very angry, because this fool had killed the son of the top Mirim. How could they make it go away now? Lime asked Brother Beck if he was okay. But Boy tried to say that he had killed a man. But suddenly Lime didn't let him say that, and with her warm embrace she pulled him to her, and told him not to worry. Lime told him not to get lost in himself, because nothing was going to happen. And they'll get through it. The next day, the general took in the lad's father, and said he was sorry his son was dead. The man was surprised at this answer and asked hatefully, pity? His son had been killed. How will they be held accountable for this? It was Secretary of State Lee Taekon. The general asked him if he dared to talk about responsibility. Daechan immediately sat on his ass after that question. Daechan realized that the general of the East could blow his head off right now. He asked the general why he was so calm. His son was hurt in this house. The general thought and asked, then what should he do to give birth and raise him another? Daechan did not allow himself to be spoken to like that and asked menacingly, what did he say? But suddenly the door opened, and Daechan was immediately alert. At the same second, Lima entered. Lime immediately fell to her knees and told her father that Brother Sung Beck was not to blame for anything. It was the young master's fault that he wanted to mock her. When Daechan heard such words, he immediately started to deny it and said it was nonsense. His son cannot mock the lady, Daechan said. Shouldn't Madam tell the truth now? Or does she think she can settle the situation with such a lie, and make her tell the truth right now? Otherwise, he would personally kill her. Because of such anger, the general couldn't help himself and broke his glass in his hands. The general immediately stood up and asked the counselor what he wished to say, that his daughter was now lying. Daechan immediately crouched down and realized that things were bad. He realized that no matter how toothless a tiger was, it was still a tiger, and if he lost control of himself, he would be left without a head. Daechan thought about it, and said that their lives were not equivalent anyway. The general asked in surprise, equivalent? Taekon replied that the son of the Secretary of State had been killed by an ordinary warrior. This is a sin that threatens the foundations of their country. The general said that if he were the secretary, he would have just chopped off this common warrior's head. Why would he shout here and ruin his relationship with him? Taekon immediately ordered the general to bring this warrior to him immediately. Lime immediately realized that things weren't going the way she wanted, and realized that Brother Song would be killed. The general told the secretary that he was sorry his son was dead. But what brother would just stand by and watch his sister being molested? Taekon was surprised and said what it meant. The general asked him, didn't he know? Sung Beck is not just his daughter's guardian. He is his adopted son. At this time, Nanny and her servants went to Sung Beck's room. She entered the room without knocking, and then Beck looked into her eyes and realized that his fate had finally been decided. He'd already lived longer than he should have. It was enough that Lima was safe. Beck greeted Nanny and said they hadn't seen each other in a long time. He asked if Ms. Lima was okay. The nanny immediately greeted him and called him young master. Beck was surprised and asked, "Why are they all of a sudden?" The nanny replied that the bath was ready and let him follow her. Beck didn't even realize what was happening at that time. At this time the general was sitting in his room drinking his tea. But Beck came to him after all. The general told him that he seemed like a different person in those clothes. "He looks nicer." Beck bowed and greeted the head of the family. The general said that he hadn't paid any attention to him all this time. He didn't even know he had grown so much. Beck answered him that he was not. He was grateful that the head of the family had accepted him, an orphan, into his home. And he wanted to apologize for the inconvenience. The general was surprised at his word and said that he had many enemies. Given his status, it couldn't be otherwise, and so he has to be on guard at all times. Besides, he has to protect his daughter. Does Beck understand what he's being told? He can't protect him as well. In 3 days, MON will go to the battlefield with a new unit. Let him go with him. Beck didn't want that, and because of all the anger, he replied to the general that he would do as he ordered. On the walk, Beck remembered the general's words that he would realize how cruel people could be when he got there. He would have to kill those vile animals. Beck himself realized how cruel they could be. But he wasn't going to die out there, even if he could become a beast himself. But suddenly, unexpectedly, he saw the silhouette of a girl standing before his eyes. Beck looked closer and saw the mistress. Lima immediately ran up to him and asked him what they should do now. But Pan didn't know what to answer her. Lime was in great anguish at this moment, and was asking him to say something. Beck replied to Lima to calm her down. After all, they are brother and sister now. Mistress thought of something and said they could leave. Beck was surprised and asked her what. Limey, because of all her strength, suggested to him that the two of them should run away. They could live together where no one would find them, and then he wouldn't have to kill people anymore. Beck immediately removed her hands from his shoulders and apologized to her. Then a couple days later, Beck came to Lime's windows and said he was leaving tomorrow, and may she forgive him for not being able to fulfill her wish. And they won't see each other for a while. Beck didn't want to leave during such wonderful moments when he and Lime were one. But on the general's orders, he must obey, and he said goodbye that he would take care of himself. And he'd come back. And lastly, he left her his locket. The next morning, Mo took charge of the men and told them to be careful. After all, they had expensive goods in their hands, and they hold supplies for their comrades on the battlefield. They are to be handled with care. But suddenly out of the blue, he saw Beck heading to the battlefield with him. Mo asked him if he had said goodbye to the lady yet. Beck replied that he hadn't. And it looks like she's still upset. Mo realized that no matter how it was, the battlefield wasn't a place where a man could survive for long. He felt sorry for the guy now, but maybe it was for the best. Mo told the guy that they were leaving soon and have him follow him. But suddenly someone behind him shouted at him and told him to stop. Beck turned around and saw that Nanny had come in and asked her what was wrong. Nanny told him to take this. Madame handed it to him, and then Beck, taking things in hand, realized why Madame hadn't seen him for 3 days. She was very worried about him. At this time, Lime had gone to the mountain, to her tree, and had seen everything around her. But she had come here to say goodbye to Beck. Holding Beck's locket in her hand, she prayed that he would take care of himself and come to her unharmed. At this time things immediately deteriorated, for he was caught in the scorcher of this whole world where there were no good and bad. The enemy saw that there was someone in the distance, and the commander ordered his men to kill him. When they arrived at Beck's place, they stopped abruptly, for the fellow stood still, ready to finish them off without fear. The barbarian commander was ordering his men to finish off the Imperials already, while Commander Mo ordered his troops to stop the barbarians. The moment they clashed with the enemies, Warrior Mo shouted for them to kill every single one of them, no one to be spared. But suddenly all of a sudden someone shouted out asking for help. Turning around, Warrior Mo saw that the guy Beck was fighting alone with the warriors and easily handled. In the moment of battle, Beck turned into a monster that saw no one in its path and destroyed. The barbarians accosted him and told the lad that they would kill him. Beck clenched his spear in his hands and replied that they were all subhumans. After the single battle, Beck looked up at the sky and realized that he had survived today. But in a moment he wondered and wondered who was the animal. Mo walked up to the guy and asked if he couldn't sleep. Beck was surprised and didn't know what to say. Mo told the guy that he thinks tomorrow's fight is going to be the most serious fight he's had in a while. Beck asked General Mo, "Has he gone to bed yet?" Mo replied that he told him to call him senior in private. Mo told him that he was a strange guy. Just follows orders without question, not worrying about his life. Beck didn't understand and apologized. Mo answered him that he's been here for 3 years. And after this battle, he could finally go home. Mo asked the guy if he felt normal. Beck replied that people were completely different from humans. Maybe next to them, he went crazy too. Mo asked him if he was worried about Madame's reaction. Beck couldn't answer and froze. Mo said he doesn't need to hide it from him, and let him not worry, no matter what he does she will be on his side. And let Beck call him senior from now on. Beck realized that he couldn't call him that. After all, he still associated Big Brother with the man who had abandoned him. But one day he would be sure to call it that. But he couldn't keep his promise. And everything changed in a different way. The next day at the moment of battle, the barbarians were shouting that they would finish them all off. Mo saw that something was wrong and asked his men what was going on. Why can't they contact the rear? The warrior replied to Mo that he was told that the rear troops had retreated. Mo got angry and said that it was all the imperial court. The barbarians looked at the battle and said that the rear of the enemies was indeed open. It seems the empire has gone completely insane. Or its military commander Taser replied that these insects have become slaves to the power struggle, forgetting the security of the country. That is their point. At this time, Lime was sitting in her room, looking at the locket that Beck had left behind as a parting gift. But suddenly Nanny came in and said she had something to tell her. Lime replied to her that she had already told her that she would not accept an offer from Mr. Cheon. Let her pass it on that way. And then Nanny said that there was news about young Master Sung Beck. Limey heard her brother's voice and got up at once. Lime immediately went outside and realized that it had been 3 whole years. He was finally back. The general at this time asked his scout if this was true. The scout replied that it was. The warrior replied that General Mo's army had been completely destroyed. But suddenly, Lime walked in and fainted upon hearing these words. The general didn't understand what had happened and immediately ordered them to get a doctor. At the battle site that day, everything was destroyed. And by some amazing situations, Beck survived. But it wasn't that easy, for he was very seriously injured. Beck looked at all the warriors and told Lima not to worry. There was no way he was going to die. In the imperial palace, Chang sat on his throne and laughed at the news. He asked his own men if Mon had really been killed on the battlefield. After all, it would be like leaving the general of the East without a hand. Chang asked Secretary of State Taekon if he liked his gift. Chan asked him how? Would he join him now? Taekon replied that first he must see the corpse of Beck who had killed his son. Let them provide him with his head. Then he will make sure that the general of the East is not just suspended, but charged with treason. Chan asked his servants if they had heard everything. Let them find Sun Beck's body and bring it to his feet. At this time, in the vicinity of the imperial court, Beck was moving around wounded and was making sounds with his spear. All the people were surprised and frightened, for never had such a warrior been in their neighborhood. But the guy didn't care about anyone and walked confidently beside them. Beck looked at the palace and said that the traders were having a good time. And he said Sakin's name. Official Seo was having fun at his estate at this time. He asked how could one be so happy at 40 years old? The second sovereign told him that it was much better here than in the palace. Seo replied that it was natural. How could they afford it at court? The sovereign asked, but will everything be all right? He means with them. And truth be told, they are civil servants and can't fend off another barbarian attack on their own. So why did they help them in the first place? Seo laughed and replied that everything had already been agreed upon. The emperor was surprised and asked what he meant. Seo replied that after the incident, the sovereign had made a non-aggression deal with the barbarians for a year, and let the emperor not be nervous and listen. For the sake of their future, and suddenly there was a great rumbling sound. And the glass caught in his hands. Seo even began to move. Someone outside shouted for the enemy to stop. The emperor asked what was going on out there. Just then the doors opened and a wounded Peck entered the room where the two traitors were entertaining. The emperor asked him how dare he break in here? But Beck did not listen to him, and cut off his head. Seo stood there at this time frightened and didn't know what to say. But Beck asked the official Seo what had happened to him. Seo immediately answered him to stop and think of the consequences. Beck raised his spear and told him not to worry. Soon he would meet his damn eunuch friend on the other side. Seo realized that the guy wouldn't stop there and gave him one last plea for him to stop. But it was too late. Beck swung his spear and cut off his head. The street was bustling with activity at this time. All the people were walking around and having fun. The girls were pestering the guys and asking them, just for fun. But suddenly one of the guys stopped, and seeing the people asked where the warriors from the border were from. The man told the warrior it was here. And they stopped right in front of the brothel. Brothel owner Bo Chong saw the familiar faces and said she welcomed Mr. Chong. Chan was surprised and asked them if they all knew him. He was the commander of the 10th Army. Bo asked, how can she not know when the whole town is just talking about him? And young Mr. Song is inside. She walks him out. Chan leaned against the girl and said that not many people know about him. For an ordinary courtesan, she knows too much. Chan went to his room and told Bo that he would check in with her again after he had sorted everything out. Bo looked at him with hatred and realized that Zhang had become the head of the 10 Army at only 30 years old. They say he is a kind man, but in reality he is a cunning fox. Chan went to the crime room and was surprised. He said it was an astounding job. Chan saw Peck and said he did it. So he's really alive. Beck was sitting on the couch at the same time, looking at the guy with his menacing gaze. The next day, Lime received the news and ran straight to town to see if it was true. The nanny shouted at her to wait. People in town were asking, what's going on here? Did this criminal dare to commit treason? By this time Lima had arrived, and walked straight through the crowd to have a look. The man was surprised when he was pushed and asked, where did the woman come from? When she saw the man in the cage, she was surprised and happy that Peck was alive. And then she cried. Taekon went to the man in charge at this time and asked him why not. Chang answered him that it was not the right time for Beck's death. Daechan didn't understand and asked the man in charge what he was talking about. Chang replied that he was the only survivor of that battle with the Mongols, so now all eyes were on him. In addition, he has to undergo interrogation about the reason for the murder of official Seo. But after that, Daechan got upset and said he understood. He ordered him to let them do their work and he would do his. Chan was angry and realized that this secretary was a fool. And if he waited a little longer, he would get what he wanted. Chan realized that Zhang was keeping his neutrality. But he brought Beck, who had killed a government official. He's obviously up to something, and worst of all, he may have proof of his connection to Taser. Until he knows what's on his mind, there's no hurry. Chan turned to No Hogwan and said he had a bad feeling. But immediately he came and asked the chief if he had called for him. Chan said that if Tae-sun starts acting thoughtlessly, let him get rid of him. At this time, Peck was put in jail, where there was a large number of guards. But he was also chained up like a criminal. Tae-sun only wanted revenge on him and came to him in prison and told him that his life was hard. Beck saw his face and immediately got angry. But Tae-sun said he wouldn't let him die in peace. Not him, not that girl. And then Beck couldn't stand his words and said that he would definitely kill him. And if a single hair falls from Lime's head, he'll kill everyone who has anything to do with him. He lunged toward him, but the chains were short and kept him away. Takon said he could see clearly now that the guy was just a beast in a human body. He should have died there. His death and that girl's death. It's all his fault. The general asked Chan, is it true, can he save Peck? Chan slowly raised his glass and replied that he could do it. But he had one condition. The general immediately asked him what other condition. Let him give him Sung Beck. The general was very angry that he wasn't being treated so seriously. And Chan asked him one last time, didn't he understand yet? Betraying his army is not something a mere official can pull off. Let the general be vigilant. Those bastards won't give up so easily. The general asked him why? After all, Zhang has absolutely no interest in politics, then why is he helping him? Chong smiled and answered him that Mon was his friend. Isn't it natural to help those who were close to him? The general thought, and realized what he suspected. Chan Maso, he would have to pay a huge price for what he had done. At this time, a follower of Chan Maso was chasing Chan, and was on the roof of the house at this time. But he thought, fortunately, he doesn't seem to have any evidence leading to Jang Maso. The problem is Taekon. It'll be dangerous if he pulls something, but said he must report it. But suddenly he heard Mrs. Lime shouting. She asked Nanny to let her in. The nanny held her and said she couldn't. Lima begged her to let her go. She has to go to Brother Sung's house. The nanny asked Mistress to calm down a bit, but looked at them and was greatly surprised. But Lime always got her way, and late at night she decided to sneak out of the palace and go to Brother Song's house. But suddenly she turned back, and saw out of the corner of her eye that someone was following her. But then she realized it was just her imagination. Bud managed to get off the roof and down to the ground, and went unnoticed. But he decided to follow the lady. Chan was sitting in his palace at this time. But clutching his drink in his hands, he wondered why No had not contacted him. Breaking the glass in his hand, a servant immediately came running to him and asked him if the gentleman was all right. Chan thought at this moment that no matter how capable he was, one could not entrust such a task to a man of unknown origin. Chan asked his man what about Peck's interrogation. The guy replied that it would be the day after tomorrow. Chan realized that once the interrogation began, there was nothing more Taekon could do. But he was sure he would try to do something in the meantime. If Dehyun foolishly hurts Beck, then Young Ilgwon might start bugging as well. That could be a problem. Chan immediately got up from his throne and told the guy to give him the sword. The guy didn't understand and asked him what he meant. Chan smiled with his sinister laugh and replied to the guy that he would handle everything himself. Lime was strolling through the city at this time, and was heading to the dungeon of the prison where Beck is sitting. But suddenly she turned her head and heard a girl standing by the porch telling passers-by to stop by their house. The girls on the second floor were also standing around asking the men to go up to their rooms. Lime met with the girl and was telling her that she had said she would do anything for her, right? But the girl replied to the mistress not to even talk about that place. She wouldn't have said that if she knew what that place was. Lime asked what was wrong with him. The girl replied that the people there were very different from those she had met here. Unlike the nobles who value cooperation and the demons who respect strength, all sorts of rabble are gathered in Haomen. So an ordinary person like her, who doesn't know martial arts, has no place there. Besides, Haomen is not far from the red light district, and a beautiful girl like her would be grabbed right away. Lime replied that she understood everything. It's a very dangerous place. She left and said she would find another way. The girl was greatly frightened after saying that, and told mistress not to even think of sticking her head in there. Lime thought, and realized that this was the only way for her to save Sona. Going to the red light district, she asked the man where she could find Haomen's establishment. Lime said that she had heard that he could be found near a brothel. The man thought, and answered the mistress that they don't sit in every brothel. The Haomen carefully conceal their identities. It's hard for the average person to meet them, and by the looks of it, she comes from a wealthy family. So let her get out of here before anything happens. The man wondered after she left how it was that mistress knew about him. It's a pity, but she won't be able to meet them here. But then a guy came up behind him and asked him what they were just talking about. Walking through the neighborhood, Limey noticed girls jumping on men to get seduced. She was thinking at this time where she could find these Haomen. But suddenly a little boy asked her, "Is she looking for Haomen?" Lime spoke to him, and they headed out on the road. On the way, she wondered how far they had to go. After all, she had already traveled far. Would she be all right? She asked the boy if she was still far away. The boy hummed a song along the way and replied to the mistress that they were almost there. Let her be patient for a little while. Lime seemed suspicious of all this. Suddenly the boy told the girl that they had finally arrived. Limey asked, "Is this an abandoned building?" And then the boy turned to the boys and said he had brought her. Suddenly, Lime saw a few guys come out in front of her. A guy gave the boy a couple of coins and thanked him for his task. The boy bowed and said that he would be waiting for more errands. Overjoyed, he said goodbye to them. The boy walked over to Lima and told her not to get so upset. Everyone lies in this place, because the strong one rules here. Lime thought about his words, about a place where everyone lies and power rules. But then several guys surrounded her, staring at her intently. And then one of the guys, apparently the older one, laughed and said that it seems that the general's daughter is no stranger to beauty. walking around the red light district like that. Lime took a deep breath and asked them, did they really think they could get away with it? Young Master Cheon immediately started laughing and said he was honored that the general's daughter remembered a mere merchant's son. Lime realized it wasn't going to be that easy with him and pulled out her knife and told the guy to stay back. And if he did, she wouldn't just stand there. She asked, what's wrong with them? Aren't they aware of the consequences if they hurt her? She had already refused his marriage proposal several times. Cheon replied to her that she seemed to have misunderstood something. On the contrary, the general will be happy. After all, he was the one who first asked her to marry him. She knows her father's in a tight spot, doesn't she? Even if she's not with him, she's in for a marriage of convenience anyway. Lime answered the boy not to make her laugh. There was no way her father would do that. Suddenly, one of the guys came at her from behind and grabbed her. The guy asked the mistress to calm down. Lema immediately started screaming for him to let her go now. The boy smiled and answered mistress not to worry. After all, it would be good for both of them. The other guy said it was exactly like that. If she accepts the four of them as fiancés, she'll be completely free of the general. Lime looked at them all and realized that they were like beasts. Beasts are not only beasts in war. She mentally apologized to Brother Song and let out a tear. The guy holding the mistress told his friends to get in line. He caught her first, so he'd be the husband. But before he could say anything, someone put a knife to his head. Lema immediately managed to escape his grasp and fell to her knees. She turned around and saw that the guy was already dead. The others were surprised and asked if he was dead. But one of the guys saw the attacker and showed where he was. The other guy ran after his attacker and managed to bring his sword with him. But Cheon shouted at them to stop. The guy pulled out his blade and attacked, shouting what kind of crazy thing did this to their brother. Lema said she didn't kill him. The guy turns out to have decided to attack and kill the girl. But at the same moment, he was attacked with several knives, and was immediately left to die in front of the mistress. Lime stood still and didn't understand how this was happening. She hadn't told anyone where she was going, had she? But suddenly someone from the roof of the abandoned house said he was sorry. But the fun ends there. And he's certainly glad Cheon got Tong Bani this far. But he can't leave living witnesses. And then one of the guys was startled by the man, and turned around, and started running away. Cheon was surprised and asked him where he was going. The boy ran away shouting that he didn't want to die. And walking next to the lady, he didn't even touch her. The mercenary decided not to let him live, and with his knife caught up with him and also cut off his head like the others. But the mercenary was not alone, and brought a child with him, who set up the mistress. Lime immediately recognized this kid who had dragged her here. The mercenary asked the kid, why did he even have to deal with witnesses? Would he like to come down? The second mercenary immediately replied that he was on his way. But it was not just the two of them, but the whole clan of mercenaries. Cheon immediately realized that his affairs were bad, and seeing that there was no option to escape, fell to his knees and begged for them to spare him. He said he was the son of a famous man. If they let him go, he will do whatever they want. The mercenary asked the guy, anything? Cheon replied, that's right, anything. Let them just say it. But that very second mercenary stuck his hook in his head. The mercenary looked at the girl and realized it was Tun Bani. An incredible beauty. She would definitely conquer all the men of the Southern Sea. She's gonna die anyway. Maybe they'll have some fun with her for the last time. But suddenly another warrior came in and killed some of his boys. The mercenary was surprised and asked, who the hell is that? He immediately attacked the guy from different directions with his hook, but he managed to dodge the hook and did a few somersaults to the side. He stood on the chain and looked up into the mercenary's face. The mercenary said that this style was definitely the man. He asked the guy why him, but thought and replied, who knows, and immediately picking up speed on the chain, he pounced on the mercenary. But he did not stop at the last moment and went forward, and getting close to the mercenary, cut off his head. But he landed on the ground and lastly said that he himself didn't realize why he did it, but continued to fight with the rest of the mercenaries, and did not give up. Lime watched the battle and wondered who was helping her. The mercenaries immediately realized in the moment of battle that this was definitely not an ordinary master. Immediately, No thrust his blade into his chest. The mercenary asked, but why him? And why is he in their way? But he stood still during the attack and easily repelled it. But asked the mercenary, he asks why he's in the way. He's not quite sure why he's doing it either, but finished off all the mercenaries around him and realized that if they were already here, then it had started there as well, but he didn't care anymore. But suddenly, Lime came up to him and thanked him for saving her. And she survived because of him. And then No froze like a statue and didn't know what to say to her. He thought at once, when he saw her eyes, that it made him tremble, but turned around and told the lady to go to Janeway. And there she could see the one she wanted to see. Lama bowed to him once more and thanked him for his help. But as he walked away he finished his words, for if of course Beck was still alive. But at this time in the prison where Beck was sitting, an army of warriors suddenly descended, on their way to kill him. Opening the gate of Beck's cell they ordered him to stand up. After all, it was time for his interrogation. Heading to the interrogation chamber, Beck wondered how this was possible. After all, an interrogation at this hour is very suspicious, and even on the battlefield, late-night interrogations were only for urgent cases. Plus, he's accused of murdering an official. So it'll be conducted by high-ranking people, but it's being conducted now, and then there's their uniforms, and that silence all around. But it's not the sound of soldiers' footsteps. 3 in front and 2 behind, but suddenly one of the warriors behind him pulled out a knife and held it behind his back to be ready to strike. Peck stopped and asked them, had they started yet? He immediately hovered and made the decision to attack on his own. After knocking out one of the 3, all the soldiers became wary and prepared to kill Peck on the grounds. Peck said there's only one, and he doesn't know who they are, but tell them to hurry up. One of the warriors said the guy was a goddamn bastard and ordered the others to kill him. Peck had nothing left but to act on his instinct as a beast, and tear the throats of his enemies with his teeth. After finishing off all the enemies, he remembered the moment when Theron had told him he wouldn't let him die in peace. Him and that girl. Beck said it was definitely him. He should go to Limey as soon as possible. She's in danger. But suddenly, someone behind him told him that he was indeed an animal. He turned around and saw Theron standing in front of him. Peck told Theron that he was proving impatient. Had he waited a little longer, he would have come for his head personally. Theron said as much as he thought it was best to chop off his head with his own hands. Fortunately, or not, he was still alive. Theron immediately ordered his servants to bring this fellow to him alive. He will personally blow that animal's head off himself. After giving their men permission, the warriors immediately swooped down on Peck to capture him alive. Beck was not afraid of them and made the decision to fight to the last man, for he has the promise of Lime standing. Theron was very angry to see his warriors failing. He asked them what they were doing. They can't even handle one half-dead man. The warrior was telling Peck he was a bastard and ducked like a rat. But the guy was smart, because his hands were blocked. Beck immediately remembered that they were there that day. He hadn't realized then, but now he could clearly see their sword style. It could be set as an example to the squad members. And then Peck told them they were weak. Or was he the stronger one? The warrior immediately got angry and attacked. The warrior said they would see how long the guy could dodge. But Beck suddenly stopped and remembered the moment he was fighting his enemies in the war. He remembered that their swords were crude. They resembled wolves. Compared to them, his sword seemed sharp at first glance, but in the end their sword had no pride. Immediately, Beck kicked him in the leg, knocking out one of the warriors. The other warrior, seeing his allies finished off, got scared. Beck realized that the sword of a warrior who had lost his pride by giving in to power was the sword of a dog. The warrior immediately jumped at him, asking how dare he kill him? Beck immediately threw the blade toward him with his foot, and grabbed it with both hands, thrusting it into the warrior's chest. At the afterthought, the warrior told him he was a goddamn bastard. Theron looked at it, and couldn't believe his eyes. Theron looked at the guy with consternation and saw that he wasn't human. He was an animal that had just been let out of its cage. Theron immediately made the decision that he had to run. Beck saw this and thought, does he really think he can stay alive after what he's done? But suddenly, unexpectedly, Beck saw a familiar body that abruptly came out from around the corner. Limey was surprised to see Brother Sung. Peck immediately thought, why is she here? Theron started laughing and said he knew it. He knew heaven wouldn't leave him. Peck immediately shouted for Lime to start running. Theron pounced on her, thinking that with her, this beast wouldn't hurt him. But suddenly, someone came up and unleashed his strongest attack against that counselor, and cut him into small pieces. Chan told Theron that he was an idiot who had crossed the line. But still, thanks to Peck, he was able to solve everything much easier. Chan looked at the gentleman and said that it seemed the rumors had been downplayed. Now he understood why the gentlemen were concerned. And Lena's beauty could ruin this country. At this moment, Lime didn't realize what was happening. Her body didn't move. Chan realized at this moment that if he used her, he could make the Emperor's seat his own and get rid of the General of the East. Chan used all his strength and told the girl to take his hand and he would give her the whole world.